Welcome to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, and along with me, of course, is co-host John Barker, and John's on the left on your television screen, and in between, in the middle, is Tom Sawyer from the 95th District of Wichita. Tom, we thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
And Tom's a Democrat, and we still got him here.
That's right. Well, he's been here before.
Yeah, he has. A couple of years ago, you were here, I remember. And thank you for coming back, and thanks for the service that you're doing. And John, I know this is Friday afternoon, of course, and so the legislature's been in session all week, and I know you guys have been busy. What's going on?
Oh, well, this is week 6. And I'm glad to see Tom on. Tom's been on my committee. We're old friends. Sometimes we go out to the North Star.
Yeah.
This guy can eat more steak.
Is that right?
for a little guy. No, it's always a pleasure to have Tom on, and we work pretty well together. Mm-hmm. But this is week 6, and we've had some business we need to take care of. One of the things I wanted to try to mention that we did do, and of course, this is Abilene, so I talk about Eisenhower. And Eisenhower's quote that I'm going to use is, because we created a Gold Star Memorial. And of course, Gold Stars families are someone who has lost a loved one during any of the wars that we've been in. Started in World War II when they started calling it the Gold Star. But Eisenhower said, "Let us solemnly remember the sacrifices of all those who fought so valiantly on the sea, in the air, and on the shores of foreign shores to preserve the heritage of our freedom." And I think that was the sense this week. When we passed it up, I think it was unanimous. There was no votes against it. We're going to create a memorial out on the Capitol lawns to recognize Gold Star families. And I think it's way past, we should have done this years ago, but we're getting it done, not using any state money. It's all volunteer money. So it's one of those things that we come together on. Mm-hmm. So we did pass that. We also, in Fed and State, we've heard a number of hearings. We passed out what we call the COS, Convention of States. We also passed out a bill for the state fair, Senate Bill 2. We also had House Concurrent Resolution 5014, which is a constitutional amendment where the legislature can review rules and regs that are created by bureaucrats. We pass a bill, we send it to the Department of Labor or whatever department, and then for them to do the rules and regs. There is a process that we presently use, and we have a Rules and Regs Committee, but the Rules and Regs Committee has no authority. The real authority, I think, probably stands with the AG, because he decides whether they're legal or not. So we have that. We had a vote on it yesterday, right, Tom?
Yeah.
And we need 84 votes. We had a number of members missing, so we did not achieve that. I would imagine there will be a motion to reconsider on Monday. Normally you have to do it the next day, but today we were on what we call pro forma, and so I would imagine there will be a motion that's from someone who voted in the majority can make a motion to reconsider, and then we'll go back and cast our votes again. Don't know how it's going to work out, but that was the excitement this week. I think we're on the floor 4 hours.
Yeah.
3 or 4 hours. And then the House tax passed, or has a bill now, House Bill 2711. It's a tax bill that cuts the tax on food from 6.5 to 3.5, but it also cuts the general income taxes on everything else. And I know it's just been introduced in tax. I want to see what the cost of it is, and we'll get that probably at some point in time. But Fed and State's moving right along. We had hearings. I am going to have a hearing on the state fruit, and it's been proposed to be the sand plum. Now this is big. But I've got a couple of classes at an elementary school that has proposed this. So we're going to WebEx them in and have the class, and each of the class members, if they should choose, they'll be able to testify or offer as a conferee. And we can explain to them the process that we go through on working a bill and how we do a bill. And it's an educational opportunity. We've had classes in the past come in for, I think, the state mineral and different things. But so I'm kind of excited about that. You know, anytime you can get young people interested in government, it's a good deal. But yeah, we're just kind of moving right along. But so we're meeting next week. We'll be on the floor Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to work all the bills that have been kicked out of committees because it's turnaround. I mean, when we come back, we take 4 days off, and then we don't work any of the House bills. We start working Senate bills, all except the exempt committees.
Is that what I would correctly call halftime?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Exactly.
I don't know as though I've ever had a sand plum. I'm going to be anxious to see how that part plays out. If I have it, I didn't realize it.
If they bring any down, we'll share
Oh,
one.
okay, you'll share one with me. I appreciate it. You're watching Legislative Updates. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, co-host John Barker on the left side of your screen. In between is Tom Sawyer from the 95th District out of Wichita. And Tom, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, glad to be here.
And we were talking before we started the show up here, and I didn't realize until you filled me in on some of it that you had been one term or one stretch of 12 years, and then you had a gap, came back for 7 years, and then you came back again for 10 years.
All right.
But you have seen a lot of changes, lot of changes in the legislature. What's the most obvious that you've seen?
Well, actually, the difference is just technology and communication is so much better now. I mean, when I first came up here, we had so much paper all the time because there were no computers.
Right. We had the girls come in at night and do all the typing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. And we would just have stacks of paper. It was just paper everywhere. So that's been a big change. But the other really big one's communication. I mean, you know, there was no computers, no email, no text, no cell phones back then. So now we hear from people right away. It used to be we'd have a big debate on the House floor, and that might be a few days before you got much public reaction because people have to read about it in the paper, watch it on the news. Now it's immediate. People are tweeting stuff out, and I'll say something on the House floor, and I'll sit down, and somebody will text me either they liked it or didn't like it or whatever. I mean, it's just amazing the difference that way.
And you were the majority leader, if I remember.
Yes, in 91 and 92, I was the majority leader.
When the Democrats were in the majority, he was the majority leader.
Wow.
Yeah.
He's got an interesting career.
Yeah.
So what committees are you on right now?
Well, I'm served as the House Minority Leader, so I try not to put myself on committees.
Okay.
But because I have to kind of keep track of everything.
Sure. Well, that makes sense.
But a few of the big issues I'm working on, one's the food sales tax.
Right.
I think that's a really big, important issue. I'm glad. I was actually glad to see 2711 introduced. It was introduced in the tax committee by the tax chairman, so that tells me there's a lot of support to do something.
Yeah.
So I like that. I introduced the bill earlier this year. I have 43 co-sponsors of Democrats and Republicans but my particular bill eliminates the food sales tax, takes it to 0% on July 1st. But to me, any bill we do, the important thing, there are a few important things, and one of them is to keep the highway fund whole. We passed, a couple of years ago, we passed the Eisenhower Highway Plan, a 10-year commitment to make sure we protect our roads and highways in Kansas. And to me, we have to keep that commitment. So what happens is right now, 16% of the sales tax goes to the highway fund. Well, if we take the sales tax, if we cut the sales tax on food, that's going to reduce the amount of money going to that fund, which will reduce the money for that program. So my bill changes that 16 to 18%. And I think one of the keys is all the bills we have, whatever we end up doing, I think it's key that we make sure the highway fund is fully funded, because that was a 10-year commitment we made, and I think we owe it to people of Kansas to keep that commitment.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with that. And eventually, as you and I both know, it'll go to conference, and we'll get it worked out between the Senate. Senate has a different version, and we'll get it worked out. But I know that there'll be some tax relief somewhere. And I agree with you as far as the Eisenhower Fund, the Highway Fund.
Yeah.
We do need to keep that. Although this year, we're pretty fortunate.
We are.
We have a lot of federal money that came in last year for the pandemic. But we do have to look downrange.
So that's a 10-year plan that we want to make sure we keep that commitment.
10-year plan on the road tax?
Yes.
On the Eisenhower Highway.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be something you'd want to keep track of, because that get away from you pretty quick.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
you've got a lot of other stuff.
Oh, we do. Got some other issues we're working on. One of them that supports the medical marijuana. We got it through the House last year. It's sitting in Senate. It's kind of amazing how things change over time. When I first came up here, I never heard anybody talk about marijuana, but now that is when I talk to constituents back home, that's the number one issue they bring up all the time.
Yeah.
It's very, very important to people.
Yes, 38 states, I think, have it.
Right, 38 states have it. Actually, all but 3 states have some form of legalized marijuana. So Kansas is just one of 3 that just doesn't have anything. So, but we worked pretty hard on a bill last year, got it out of the House, big bipartisan margin. And
my bill.
Yep, it came out
of my committee, and I worked with Tom and others on it to get it right. We sent it a perfect bill to the Senate. Of course, they're trying to mess with it and change it around, but it'll come back in a conference, and I'm hopeful that will happen along with sports book.
Right, and that's another big issue, the sports betting. A lot of states have already moved on sports betting, but I'm amazed all the time when I run into people who don't realize it's illegal. People they're betting online and stuff.
Right.
I'm like,
down in the Caribbean or something.
Right. I'm kind of like, that's illegal in Kansas. So people enjoy doing it. We've got to figure out a way to regulate it and tax it, and hopefully we can get that done.
Yeah, and I've kept my ranking member, Lewis.
Yeah.
Appraised of everything and gave him the latest version of the bill. But, and Tom and I've worked on this for years.
We have.
So hopefully we'll get that done, and then there'll be a few points that we disagree with, but overall we both work for what's good for the state of Kansas, and our sports book has to be a good deal for the state of Kansas.
It does. And I do understand the casinos have concerns, and we got to make sure they're taken care of, but we don't want them to totally control it, and that's kind of one of the issues that comes up.
Exactly, but they're coming around.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's a lot of that came from the support from the governor's office, their chief of staff, who's got Abilene connections.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's right.
And Tom, with with your area in Wichita, the 100th district, what part of Wichita is that?
I have the Delano area. So if you're familiar with Wichita, as soon as you leave downtown, you cross the river, go west, you're in my district. So I've got Friends University, Newman University, Delano. So it's a good part of it's a kind of a growing part of Wichita, actually.
And so financially, economically, the area is doing well?
Delano is booming right now. We have that new ballpark that was built, Riverfront Stadium, and a lot of new businesses that have come in there. We've got a lot of restaurants and bars and shops and stuff. It's really, and a lot of new housing moving into Delano. So it's really kind of a booming part of town.
All right, we're going to cut away, take a break. You're watching Legislative Updates. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, co-host John Barker. On your left, in between, is Tom Sawyer from the 95th District out of Wichita, and of course, John's from the 70th District out of the Abilene area and around this area. And so I hear a lot about and in the paper about this redistricting, and what's going on with it now?
Well, good. We got something we could disagree about, and be agreeable about it. Yeah. We've got the federal's done, right, Tom?
Well,
and that's kind of.
The courts have to sign off.
Now the courts will make the decision. Right. So it's in court. A lawsuit's been filed by the ACLU and some other liberal organization. But I did find it interesting, and maybe you can help me here. What did they file it in state court? Because it's a federal issue. It'll end up in federal court. Would you agree with that?
I don't know. I think there were two things they're looking at in state court. The one thing that did was extremely unusual was putting the city of Lawrence into the first district, the big rural area. And I think there was a lot of discussion that that's hardcore political gerrymandering. And the federal courts, the Supreme Court ruled that's a state issue now. The feds won't deal with it. So I think that's part. Okay. I'm guessing that's part of why they went to state court.
But you'd probably agree that federal court will be the ultimate.
Well, in the past, that's where our maps have gone.
That's where the maps are. But they were going to House districts, and that's fine.
Yes. Oh, I was just talking. This is actually the 5th time I've been involved in some way, shape, or form with redistricting in Kansas.
You've been here too long.
I was very young when I first started. So, but to me, it is always really tough when we do the House redistricting. I mean, overall, the House has always, every time I've done it, we end up passing big bipartisan maps. We don't, in the end, have trouble doing that. But the biggest problem, lots of times, is within our own party, because people that have to give up don't want to give up anything to somebody next to them. People have to gain. They want to take something somebody else doesn't want. And there's always a lot. I mean, that's always one of the toughest parts of the redistricting. Well, I'm going to do house maps.
And especially this year, because we've lost population in rural Kansas. So 2 of those districts need to be moved to Johnson County, and I think 1 may be moved to your
Sedgwick County.
Sedgwick County.
Yeah.
And so that, you'll never get 84 votes because those people that lose their district, they're not going to be voting for anything. But on the redistricting, how do you think our committee's doing?
Well,
we've met.
Yeah. Well, this was because part of it was the delay in the census because of COVID. So we got our numbers late. So it's been a slower process. Usually, we're kind of further along by this point. In fact, we didn't even get the software and hardware to do the maps until the session started. Basically,
true. And
normally we've been doing that for months before session. During the off time, you had time to work on that. So it's really delayed the process. I was concerned about the public tour we did, about it being truncated and not a lot of public notice. But as it turned out, we got over 600 testimony from 600 different people, which is pretty good.
But we have a deadline too.
Oh, we have that's the thing. If we don't get it done, as we know what happened 10 years ago, then the courts will draw the maps. Because we've got by June 1st, it's a filing deadline, so we have to be done well before that.
Yeah, we do, because it's got to go out to all those counties and all to figure out which ward, which precincts go where. Yeah,
we put a lot of work on the county clerks when we change things. So the more we change, the more work they have to do.
That's true, and we have to realize that.
Yeah,
because we can't produce it one day and have them make all the changes the next.
And I actually tried to, when I went working on maps, I actually tried to I'm a former county clerk too, before I was even in the legislature. So
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I knew you were on the pro board.
Yep. But the pro board was one of my stints out in between legislative terms. But the reason I ran for the legislature was when I was county clerk, myself and our county treasurer was Republican. We go to Topeka with a lot of other county clerks and treasurers to lobby on this bill. It was called the Tax and Tags Bills, House Bill 2605. This is like 1984, somewhere around there. And back then, you didn't pay your taxes on your car when you got your tag. You paid it the same time as your house. Okay. So we were trying to change the law. It was much easier for the clerks and the treasurers to keep track of stuff if you paid the taxes with your tag. So we had a bill to do that. Well, we're in tax committee, and I'm sitting there. These people, first of all, a lot of them weren't paying attention, and they were asking the stupidest questions. I thought, I'm sitting there. They don't know what we do. How can they write this law? Well, they don't even understand what we do. So I'm like, that gave me motivation. I got to go up there and help fix this. We need people sitting on that tax committee to understand what we do and understand the local tax process.
Well, I tell people all the time, I have a vote doesn't make me an expert in the area.
Yeah. Well, now that I've been here, I kind of understand. So since the legislature, you got people from all groups. But when you're sitting there looking at that, I'm kind of like, so that's what really actually motivated me a couple years later when I decided to run.
I always admire you because you really know the budget.
Oh, well, thank you.
You have that breakdown and
it helps be an accountant.
It helps to be an accountant to do that, and I thought, Tom does know the budget, and he knows how it works. Yeah. We've had a good time doing it.
We have. But we got interrupted on reapportionment or districting, but if we don't, get it done, the problem, I think we should have a lot of motivation to get it done, because when the judges did do it 10 years ago, they don't pay attention to where incumbents live.
Right, they don't.
And we had a lot of people running against each other and stuff that I think there's a lot of motivation for both sides, I hope, to get it done. And you said 84 votes. Well, you'll have trouble getting 84 if you're trying to get just Republicans. Traditionally...
No, I was thinking about some of the people that are losing their districts moving to Johnson County. They probably won't.
Oh, no, they won't. But I'm just saying, traditionally, we've been able to pass maps with over 100 votes. Yeah. Because we do it bipartisan. So you got the people that are losing districts won't vote for it, but you got enough other people.
Right, that's true. That is very true.
So we've done a good job of that. Now, the Senate, on the other hand, is a different story. 10 years ago, even 10 years ago, the House passed a bipartisan map. Yeah. But the Senate couldn't. It was actually a fight amongst Republicans.
Yeah. And my thoughts were a lot of them were worried that a House member was going to run against them.
And senators always worry about that.
They do. But we've had a good time.
you got a lot going on there. Be anxious to see, I guess, what the court does, how all this turns out, because I know there's no simple answer to it, because whatever you do, if you change something, somebody's mad at you. And so what rolls off the tongue is, well, you're doing this because, and then you have that. We're going to cut away, take a break. You're watching Legislative Updates. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. This is the final session of our show today, and we won't have a show next week because
We're adjourned.
They're adjourned. There you go. I was trying to get the right word. They're adjourned, and so they're going to take a little break because I know you guys have been going full speed, full time, and we appreciate it. We appreciate it. And Tom, I appreciate the fact, just like John pointed out, that you're an accountant by trade, and so when you get into those settings, the things that you see are different than what some of the others. Now, John, of course, was a judge, and John was military before that, and so you get into that setting, and it makes just a huge difference. I thank you for being a part of the legislature and for coming out. And John, as always, thank you, and have a good short break there. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Hope you have enjoyed this segment of Legislative Updates with John Barker. I'm Doug Thompson with special guest John Barker. Tune in next time for another Legislative Update.